There we go. We should be live. Morning, everybody.
Good morning.
His eyes downwards.
Good morning.
So morning, everybody. It's Tasha and I as usual. We've got special team Huddle member Fraser Gault joined us today for a chat about all stuff team. We were just kind of having that brief warm up, weren't we, about what we're going to discuss, and it was kind of like, team stuff. Obviously, the clue's in the title. But I was saying, Fraser and I have known each other for a while. We got to know each other through another good friend, David Howe, who also wants to come on here. So he'll be joining the team Huddle at some point. There you go. I've just said it live, so he can't get out of it now.
Yeah.
I'm sure we can find an excuse if he doesn't. But one of the things I've loved about chatting with Fraser is our conversations go anywhere and everywhere. There's team stuff, there's family stuff, there's work stuff, there's cultural stuff, there's political stuff, there's all sorts of things, but it all comes down to that core hub of people and just talking about people in any context. But also, one of the things we were chatting about coming on here was, I can't remember how long ago it was, but you posted something that said teams are a relationship, and just those words, damn it, that's a tagline there. I wish that was all over my website. I wish I could claim that. But it epitomized everything about a team, the whole emotional relationship, conversational, all that stuff. So on that basis, do you want to introduce yourself, Fraser, and what it is about teams being relationships that's so cool? Well, I try and just check that the LinkedIn stuff's working.
Okay. So first of all, thanks, Tasha, for having me on. Also, thanks again for calling me special. It's been a while since my mum did that. But everybody is, right? That's that cliche.
Yeah, we're all special.
So I'm Fraser Gault. I'm a mentor, trainer, and business consultant. And so I'm based in Central Eastern Europe. Most of my client base is there, but I'm actually Scottish, because you can tell by the red hair and the whiskey. Yeah.
The caper in the background.
Yeah, exactly. So basically, I've been working now for 20-something years. I don't remember how, in quite a lot of different leadership positions through government, finance, banking, insurance, IT. And what I've constantly come up with is this kind of org chart ruling, or so-called leading by leaders. And for me, it's like, when someone says they're a leader, I wonder where that mindset comes from. Because for me, leader's just a behavior. I mean, everybody has to lead themselves, right? But at least it's my thought. And so, what's the fundamental basis of working in any organization with other people is having some form of relationship with them. And if you can't have a relationship that's based on an element of trust, then your team is just not going to function. It's a group masquerading as a team. And, it wasn't that kind of, wake up in the morning, kick the side of the bed and have that aha moment. It was more of a thing that kind of gradually came up. Probably it's a confirmation bias as well for a while. But when I stepped out of the corporate world and into this world of consulting and training and so on, I realized that people are really struggling on that core level of having even a conversation around what their business is about, or why they're even doing something, and everybody talks about that well-known person with the glasses that's got the same name, talking about start with why. And it's kind of like, no, don't start with why, start with purpose, start with what's it for, why am I even here doing this and with you, right? And I think you can't have a relationship without trust. And trust is a hard thing, right? Because everybody thinks trust's lovely and warm and fuzzy and rainbows and chocolate and all that stuff. But trust is also the ugly thing you don't want to hear. And that's hard because that's conflict. And people don't like conflict. Because, we're all friends here and we shouldn't argue. Well, actually, we should debate. Not argue, but debate things, not about each other. So I guess that's where I came to. And everywhere I'm going now, I see these 5 dysfunctions of teams, or also 5 dysfunctions of relationships, stages of teams not working, people not thinking about that because they've never been shown or nobody's ever asked them. And I think that's a bit sad. So it's kind of my crusade now of helping people think about it in that way. Like we're working together on this emotional level because we're emotional-based beings. And it's nothing personal in business. Everything's personal in business on a level.
Yeah. Just out of interest, I mean, I've just, based on what you just said, thought about what makes a relationship in general terms. And I've come up with some things here. And actually, number one for me was trust, but also as the opposite side of that, the shame and vulnerability, and then clarity, and then understanding that there's always going to be an element of give and take. Even, in friendships, there's always going to be somebody who generally makes more effort to pick up the phone, to make arrangements, to do stuff. And, that's the kind of something that probably isn't talked about, but it's just there until one person realizes that actually this isn't working for me anymore and I've outgrown it. And then also being kind and setting those boundaries. So what else would you say kind of really makes great team relationships added to that? And obviously kind of your own perception of what you do with your teams.
Maybe one word or maybe two words then. So transparency and resilience. So, these are really nice, fashionable words. We can put a hashtag on them if you want.
Who's just gone through the roof.
Yeah. Okay. Wow. Transparency isn't. I think transparency is the key to not being manipulated or being aware when you are, because we are manipulated all the time. It's just a dirty word, right? And that can only come from authenticity. And authenticity is, I am who I am. I'm comfortable with that, but I'm willing to improve on what I need to improve on. And this resilience.
Sorry, I was just going to say, could you change the word manipulation to influence? Is that more helpful, or is manipulation?
No, there are two elements there. So for me, the difference, manipulation is just simply where I'm getting somebody to do something that benefits me, not them. And influence benefits both. And if you're transparent about what those benefits are, then you're influencing. If you're busy to sell somebody something, that we've got this great development opportunity for you, or we think you'd be great at this job, what do you think? Without telling them, here's the good side and here's the bits that you might struggle in. And you're manipulating someone, right? You're not really influencing their thoughts. So and that's something that I've experienced a lot of, certainly. I always wondered when, Fraser, we've got this great development opportunity for you. I think, well, how many other people said no? Right? And secondly, if it's so good, why do you keep trying to sell me it instead of telling me what it is?
Right.
So that's kind of prevalent. So for me, transparency means you are influencing and you're less likely to be in this manipulation trap. And resilience is about just some stuff's good and some stuff's not. And the stuff that's not, it's not about how much it affects you, because I don't know how much that, I'm not in control of your emotions. That's your choice, how you react to something. But what I've got to do is consider how quickly, as a leader in mindset, how quickly I recover from that. So the depth of impact I can't do anything about. That's on the individual. But the time taken to recover, I can do that by, again, the transparency, the trust level, the communication level. And that all comes down to that interpersonal relationship that says, you don't look all right.
Yeah.
You want to talk about it? And if the answer is no, I don't want to, all right, at some point, probably you will. I'm here for you.
Yeah. And it's finding different ways to ask those questions as well, isn't it? So
yes, exactly.
Open your mind and, using language to open up conversations and looking at the nonverbal communication that goes on and looking beyond that. And, like you said, stepping away when you know that you're reading the signals for that person to say, look, I don't need you right now, but giving them an opportunity to do so at another time. That's really key, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it's also about what your intention is, right? Because I think this is and we see a lot of it right now, where people go and want to help someone. Why are they doing it? Are they helping to make themselves feel better? Or are they helping because they genuinely want to help? One's not a selfless act. And I'm of the opinion that we should be helping anyway, because we can.
Yeah.
And if you get fulfillment from doing that, that's fine. But if you're only doing it to get fulfillment, then that's quite narcissistic, right? Again, a manipulative mindset. Yeah. So
it's fascinating that when you do the selfless act, there is a selfish element to it, because it's somebody who works for a charity. Yes, obviously they're helping others, but they feel good at the end of the day. When they go home and they think, I've helped individuals. Seeing them smile made me feel good. making a difference to life made me feel good. It's a secondary outcome as a result of the primary objective. And but you don't get that the other way around. If your primary objective is to make yourself feel good, rarely do you make others feel good. It can happen by luck, but it rarely happens that way around. So it's interesting, if you start to shift it, it does actually help you anyway. You get that secondary benefit if you're driving with that not pure intent, because that makes it a little bit evangelical, doesn't it? But as honest as you can to say, look, I get that I'm going to get something out of this, but really I'm here to help you.
Yeah.
That's the transparency element, right? I mean, if the selfless act, okay, so I volunteer with a charity, actually 2 or 3 of them at the moment, but there's obviously something in it for me, and I'm transparent about that. But, if I feel good as a result of doing one act, then that's a dopamine hit for me, right? But as a result of delivering what that charity wants to do and being successful in my role, which we're talking about there, Cole, is the secondary element. That's an endorphin boost because there's a purpose behind it.
Yeah.
And I think what we live in is the society of dopamine fixes, because we mistake pleasure for happiness because we don't understand what happiness is, because it's constantly portrayed as the insta lie, everything's wonderful and I have no problems.
It's the sustainability, isn't it, behind it?
Exactly, right? And that's the resilient element of being able to switch your mindset. Not don't think about it. It's not that, let's not ignore it. It's accept it. Accept whatever situation you're in and focus on what can you do to either maintain it because it's good, or if it's not good for you, what can you do to move out of that and see the positive element in it, right? And this is where Ernest Shackleton and the endurance story, and Shackleton got all the credit about this, how he's achieved this thing. Well, yeah, but there's a guy called Frank Wosley who was the captain of the ship, who actually did all the navigation, all the activities, and all these other things to keep this morale up of his people, who he didn't really have any say or accountability towards, but just out of being a decent human being, cared for, because there's an element of compassion there. And I think that's missing in teams.
Yeah, and that, I think that relates to the image of our teamship, doesn't it, Colin? And we talked about, how if we're in our own little boats floating around in the ocean, we might get to where we want to be one day, but when we're all together acting as a ship, somebody's making sure that the sail's up at the right points and navigating the seas in the rough storms and all that kind of stuff. And there's always going to be some element of, the sail is going to need to slack every now and again. And that kind of relates to, there's going to be times when our team, team colleagues are going to not be able to emotionally to do what's needed of them. So that's when we come to step in, but we don't know about that unless we've got, a deeper, meaningful relationship with that person, do we?
I think right at the beginning, Fraser, you talked about the leader and this kind of idea that we created, this almost idolized set of circumstances around the leader, and I fall into that. I've fallen into that certainly from a corporate perspective, but also from we're surrounded by media. I make no apologies. The regular listeners will know I'm a geek, but even things like Captain Picard, Captain Kirk, they are sat literally in the center seat. They make the decisions. They are idolized by their crew. They are held up as the epitome of a leader, and I love it. But there's still you sit there and think, well, the ship would operate quite fine without them. They would still go off and survey certain things, and the team would pull together. And actually, when the proverbial hits the fan, it's not them making the decision, it's them pulling the others together. And usually they do it all by themselves anyway. And then they kind of just ask for permission. There's this kind of concept. We for some reason, have burdened people with this big weight to say, right, you're in the boat, Shackleton, you're the person who made this happen. And it's not that they're not showing leadership in the right time, but there are plenty of other people that show leadership in a different way, in a contextual element. And we've somehow, we've kind of boxed ourselves in that the solution is this person, somebody will help us out of this situation. Where is this person? We need to send this person on a training course, or once they come to their own stuff, they will pull us out. And it's kind of, that's a huge ask.
Do you remember that the UK lottery advert from years ago? There's just this, crowded street, and there's this big finger that comes down and points and says, "It's you." And I kind of always thought that's the kind of mentality that one individual, just one, will lead this entire organization out of chaos into some magical, mythical land where everything's wonderful. And, that person then is not allowed to make mistakes, is not allowed to be vulnerable, is not allowed, and as that person sees themselves,
But you can kind of, sorry, that just led me on to something else then. Sorry, carry on, and I'll make a note to remind myself what I was going to talk about.
They feel this need to be perfect. And so they start acting like a leader. And I don't know what that means, because if you're acting as a leader and not doing something that you would normally do and behave in a way you normally behave, then you're being deceiving, right? Because it's fake. And people sense that.
Absolutely. And I was just going to say, this relates back to even before people get into the workplace. I believe, this is my belief, that in a family setting, kids these days sometimes aren't given the opportunity to lead their situations. And we've always kind of had a bit of an open kitchen policy where, the kids can come and cook. They make a freaking mess, but they will have to tidy it up. But I know some of my, parent friends who won't even let the kids near the kitchen. And therefore they are not given... Sorry, Colin.
She's my safe space.
To make mistakes, to break the eggs, to drop things on the floor, to break stuff. So this is just like one element of that kind of self-leadership from a very young age that I think some kids are being stunted, and obviously don't really get taught those kind of life skills at school. So how would we expect people to be leaders in their own lives when they're stunted from a very young age? It's got to start somewhere, hasn't it?
I think the phrase role model, I think, is starting to become quite damaging. It's this is who you should be all the time. Going back to what you said, 24/7, between the year of 2017 and 2021, you did this job, and this is you should have been this person for that whole 4-year period or whatever. And it's exactly the same as a parent. You need to emulate this person. And actually, we are all unique, not even just unique individuals. We're unique at different times. I know it doesn't make sense, but context is really important.
Yes, absolutely.
Not even just major life changes, but just the ebb and flow of life. There are some days when, I just want to turn up and just rock up today. And look, can you guys I'm just not feeling it. That's not to say I won't do bits and pieces, but listen, can you guys support me? Whereas we don't often explain that. We're not transparent about that. We'll just kind of rock up in a mood. And it's just being aware that we all go through different things and we all cook in different ways at different times. Yeah. It's great when the kids want to come in, but if it's 10 minutes before dishing up time,
it's not appropriate.
Well, you see, I have a problem there because I think I turn into not quite Gordon Ramsay in the kitchen. So,
Gordon Ramsay would be worried if he came into my kitchen.
The thing is that little kids remember everything, especially the words, and so I'm not telling you what, but coming back to the point, the point is that if we don't give the space to make mistakes, no one learns. Yeah, and it's this accountability, right? We'll use that fancy word. Next thing we'll talk about, Colin, is engagement. So the survey. Engagement and involvement. Yeah. How are somebody supposed to find out what they're naturally good at or not?
Yeah.
And naturally,
give the opportunity to find out what that is.
Yeah. And if you don't go and try a bunch of things and accept the fact that the first time you do it, you're probably not going to be very good. No. But did you enjoy doing it? Yeah. Did the result work out the way you wanted? Probably not. Yeah. And I had this fixed mindset for years that, when I'm in the kitchen, nobody else. Get out of my way. Actually, it's a phrase my mother used. Get out of my kitchen. And it stuck with me, so get out of my kitchen. And so when it came to this freedom of fending for yourself and cooking for yourself, then, you felt a bit kind of, I don't know if I'm doing the right thing here. And, and nobody gives you any so-called feedback, which we'll come to that in a minute, but you don't get any response other than your own view. Yeah. There's no guidance there. So how you carry that wrong or whatever. Yeah. And I think this is where teams teams have got this kind of responsibility, not the leader's responsibility of the team, but the team's responsibility through the relationships to hold each other accountable, but to support one another and say, see, you're having an off day. And I think everybody has, I call them YouTube days. Actually, it's not what I call them, because I use the swear word because we're live and you can't edit it out, but it rhymes with duck. So a duck it day, right? Or a duck it moment where whatever you're working on, your brain just gets to that stage where I just can't, what I'm doing here is wrong. You have to switch. And the team has to accept that that happens. And the leader, the so-called appointed, it's you one, the crown or whatever, has those too.
Yeah.
That's the compassion element that's missing.
Yeah.
I don't mean go and hug a tree. If that's your thing, hug a tree. But what I mean is just this kind of,
I think
compassion element that's not going on here.
Colin and I talk a lot about compassion, don't we? And I think, positivity is great, but flexibility and exploration are most important.
Yeah, again, there's this, the labeling of things that we have in terms of positivity. What's positivity? Well, I'm smiling. That's positive, right? I'm smiling in a bad situation. Yeah, that's positivity in a bad situation. No, everything's great and wonderful and amazing. And you see it everywhere that, I'm back to the office. It's brilliant. Here's a selfie of me back at the office. Well, and what? Sorry, but, what are you trying to say by that? Your team's amazing because they're in the office. What are you trying to say, and what message are you sending by broadcast?
What are you not saying?
And that's we don't communicate anymore. We broadcast, and we make announcements, and we show, and we all fall into that trap of broadcasting as opposed to contextualizing the message.
What are we doing now then? Just checking.
Bring cake. Can we eat?
You've got cake, you dive in. There's this, just riffing off what you were saying, I suppose. There's a mixture there, isn't there, of two things. There's this kind of, so being blunt about what you described there, how we portray ourselves to everybody else. And that's usually where we focus. Like you say, social media focuses on that. Training courses focus on that. You must be more transparent with your team. You must be more honest with your team. What's usually missed is how honest you're being with yourself, how transparent you're being with yourself, how compassionate you're being with yourself, how involved are you being with yourself.
Yeah.
Before we came into this, when we were talking, we were just talking to each other, and you said, "Oh, everything's so busy at the moment, Fraser." We kind of, again, it's that external focus. There's just so much going on. I must distract myself by just being busy and not taking that time to go, am I being honest with myself? Am I being transparent? Just what's going on with myself?
Yeah.
And it doesn't always have to be deep. There's a time for going deep, but just taking a moment to go, actually, you know what? Yeah, I don't feel like it today. And rather than hide that, I'm going to, walk in and say, right, I can't be ducked today. But I'm going to at least say, look, listen, not feeling it. There's something going on. Don't necessarily want to talk about it. Just give me a nudge if I'm causing a problem. Otherwise, if it goes on, I'm off.
But then that dispels the mind reading of everybody else wondering what's going on, if their work isn't up to scratch, or if there's too much on, or there's something going on with the structure that's beyond their control and something big is going to happen. It dispels all of that mind reading stuff, doesn't it?
It's this kind of and I think when people are coming to my workshops, they get a bit of a shock because we're here to talk about team dynamics, and the first thing is like, so let's talk about the most important relationship you've got, and they're like, the one with yourself. How emotionally honest are you? Well, what do you mean? And so when we go through these it's an element of reporting in it. It's not personality or anything. We dig deeper than that. Really to understand yourself, because if you don't, we're indoctrinated or educated or whatever to show everything around you is important, and we forget that actually how you view everything around you is based on how important the relationship you have is with yourself. And there are always going to be those uncomfortable things that we don't like to admit. That doesn't mean you have to admit them to others, but you have to admit it to yourself. And if you don't, then you end up with the worst case scenario of Dunning-Kruger syndrome. And I'm sure everybody can Google that, and then they'll realize, when they're dealing with people who've got it. Now, I think when we come back to the relationship we have with ourselves, once we figure out that it's okay to be you, Like, I mean, it's really okay. And some people will like it and some people won't. And that's also okay. You can get beyond that emotional barrier and start working together. And true collaboration, not cooperation, like collaborating together to achieve something, even if you don't like the person. People are like, what? That's like the crystal skull, isn't it? That everybody, what's his name's looking for. And no, it's not this mythical thing. It's there. It exists. It's just. I kind of sum it up with, how are you doing? Yeah, not having a good day today. All right. What do you feel like working on? Because we've got these 3 things. Which one's the easiest? Well, let's get that one done today. What do you think? Yeah, all right. That's collaboration. Not some. We have this massive portrayal of some, really important. It's vitally important. Well, yeah. I mean, if it was important, we'd be working on it. If it wasn't important, then probably we wouldn't be working on it, right? Because it's work. So I think if people understand the relationship you have with yourself is the fundamental one.
Yeah. But how many teams have you worked with that, I mean, obviously after your workshops, hopefully they'll be doing this, but I think it's really important to reward the behavior that you want to see. And how can you encourage teams to do that on an emotional level with their relationships? What works?
And I think we missed the bit where, when we look at reward, we think incentive. So I have to reward my team by doing this. Yes? Yeah. And it becomes artificial because they've done something, so I must reward them. And that's not, I think, how do you recognize that in your team? You have to ask your team what reward looks like for them.
And ask them what connection means. What does connection mean to them?
Exactly. So when I've been forming teams, and, it's not just, we're working on startups and helping other people organize their new businesses and transformation as well. One of the first things, I'm a big advocate of putting this social agreement in place that says, this is how we communicate. This is the frequency of when we communicate, what we talk about. And it's the team members that decide it, not necessarily that appointed leader. Obviously there are boundaries, but within that you create this working subculture of your team. So we know when someone's calling us that it's urgent, because if it's urgent, we phone. If it's not, then we text. And if it's for info, we send an email, right? 3 simple things. And that's the kind of, this is the mechanical things, but one of the questions I asked one of the CEOs I'm mentoring at the moment, I said, have you asked them what their preference is for celebrating success? What do you mean? How do you recognize? Well, I recognize how you recognize it. How do they want to recognize their success?
Yeah.
I don't know. How do I find out? Ask.
Yeah.
There's a really simple, and people say, oh, it's an obvious example, but I've worked at places where, well, we buy pizza. When we've had a long, we'll buy everybody pizzas. Okay. And how much pizza's left over? Well, sometimes quite a bit. Depends who's in, usually is the answer, because there's a certain people. It's like, well, what does that say? Well, it says that they like pizza, but what about all the others? Well, they probably don't get there quick enough, or maybe they don't like pizza. Well, if they want something else, they just have to say. So I don't know, I can say this out loud because she won't be watching this.
Yeah.
But my sister always buys me a Christmas present, something I don't want. It's just because she's obligated to buy me a Christmas present. And I love the intent behind it, but it's for her. She's choosing something she wants to give me because she wants to feel good about that. And it's the same principle. We always used to have meat pizzas. Okay. Poor old vegetarians miss out. Well, they can pick the meat off. Again, you're missing the point of not involving them in a very simple discussion about, okay, guys, I was going to get some food because it's late night. What do you want? It doesn't have to be complex. Let's put together a reward system with tiers and everything. It can. All you've got to do is ask. Yeah, I think what I do see is sometimes a fear. Well, if I ask, they'll say they want a 10-course meal from the local Chinese. That's really expensive. Well, then you say, sort it out, guys. You're not having that. It's KFC, vegetarian. Here's a selection of menus. Pick it. You can encourage them to think through it sensibly, but it's so great to hear that kind of just ask.
Yeah, I got a similar mindset, slightly different approach. Here's the money. Go and get yourself some food. What? and it's like, oh, you're going to have to claim that back, and is there a budget for it? And that's my problem to worry about. My biggest deal right now is go and get yourself some food.
I remember chatting to a member of my team, and we were talking. We were just saying, "Okay, yeah, you've been working, all these late nights and stuff have been going on. How you feeling?" He said, "Oh, good. Everything's fine. It was needed. Just missed just the only thing I feel a bit bad about was missed a night out. The missus had to cancel the night out. Well, okay. How about you take her out then next Friday? How about we'll give you some money and you take her out?" And literally, you could see the emotion in his face of a tailored reward, or just kind of acknowledgement, or bit of gratitude, or just thank you, that was tailored to his circumstance. And he was just, oh wow, yeah, that would be amazing. And it's that sort of specificity and acknowledgement that's personal than we always get pizza. It's we've got a table, we've got a foosball table in the office, so of course we're a modern friendly team. Who was it that liked foosball? Well, Jim and Susan play on it all the time. Does anybody else play on it?
Or they don't work here anymore because they went to a different company. It's got PlayStation. I used to work in a company. I can't tell you which one, but you figure it out. And if you wanted any support from IT, you had to raise a ticket, much like any other corporation, and you went through the help desk offshore and second line, third line support back to the person that sits like 2 meters away from you, so that they could actually help you. And in the time that took, which was around about 9 or 10 hours, you knew exactly where to go and get that support, because they were on the top floor where the terrace was. You got a view over the Thames, and there is wall-to-wall beanbags, TV screens, and video games. And I remember my first visit there, I was thinking, when did he do any work? And Fraser, we're an inclusive organization. I'm like, yeah, I get that. But if IT support are not available and no one's at their desks and they're always up here, my question is, when are they doing any work? Because I don't see those results. And if I'm not seeing it, then nobody else is. And we have not a results problem. We have a marketing problem and reputation problem of the IT guys. Because for all I know, they're up all night. But with the linear mindsets and this closed mindset of, I've been working my tail off here for 10 hours trying to solve something I can't, and you're not available and you're upstairs playing the PlayStation, that looks really bad in terms of how my company operates internally. And then therefore I have a branding problem externally.
And like you said, it affected how you felt, it affected therefore your state of mind and what was going on in your body or physiology, your behavior and the outcome, with everything that you said and did, as a result of that, until you kind of worked out, oh, actually, I need to find out what's going on there.
Yeah, exactly. And it's kind of, if I'm thinking that, then everybody is. Yeah. Maybe not, right? But this perception's reality. And so we're so busy dealing with all this kind of stuff and not thinking about what's good for you and those relationships. And Colin, you're talking about that personalized. It's personalized because it is personal. Simple things like calling people by their first name and hopefully getting it right. And I used to see managers literally sweating. How do you pronounce that name? I don't know. Why don't you go and ask them? Well, that's embarrassing. Not as much as getting it wrong. Oh, but they'll correct me, will they? So when I moved here, everybody called me Fraser. And I thought, that's fine. I'm going to move to Boston, become a doctor on a radio show and have funny hair. And I felt embarrassed to correct people. Actually, it's Fraser with an S. Yeah, so, and now I just give up. I suppose I call that the Starbucks effect. Go to Starbucks now. I do that sometimes. It's a cheeky thing where you have more ice cream than coffee. And basically, I just call myself Bob. It's easier. But, so you lose yourself in all of this kind of stuff going around, and I think there's a lot of individuals that are just lost. They try to conform.
Exactly, and I think just going back to what you said at the beginning of the conversation with in a relationship, there's always going to be people that you don't generally get on with, and that's the same in a family, isn't it?
No,
realistically, there are going to be people that you don't get on with, but you still come together with that common sense of purpose and define your family and do what you need to do and have the clear strategy around what you do every day, every week to come together, and you work around it. So it shouldn't be any different at work, should it?
No, because you only got one life. And there's this the work-life balance, work-life integration thing I kind of ranted about the other day on LinkedIn. It was just like, look, you got one life. You can find a common interest. What have you got in common to solve? Come together, solve it, and move on.
Yeah.
And yes, if you've got family events, and one thing we're really big on in Central Eastern Europe is we get dressed up for anything, any event. And we've got names days as well, which are really cool because they're kind of like birthdays, but not quite as big a birthday, not quite as big a gift. But it's 2 times a year to celebrate minimum. And you bring everybody together. And of course, there are people you like, and there are people that are, they're there. That's called acceptance.
Yeah.
Acceptance and tolerance and respect.
Exactly.
Right? And if you can do it in your private life, then you can do it at work too.
Absolutely. And I think that's what some people don't do. And this is the problem, isn't it? They go to work and go, right, okay, well, I am this person. I've got a different identity and I need to put a different cloak on. And they don't do what they do when they're at home. And that's the thing that, in a way needs to shift, isn't it, really? Because you're not a different person. You're just using different resources to create a different identity. And therefore, what's happening with your values? If you've got one set of values at home, but they're not being reflected at work, then that's not going to work well for you and for everybody else around you.
Yeah, I've been in that trap where, I got promoted. Looking back, it was way too early. I could do the job. I did it all right. Was I brilliant at it? No. I delivered, but at huge cost to my own mental health and health. Was it worth it? No. Would I do it again? No. And so was it a great job and a great company? Yes. I think a lot of people fall into the trap of blaming the company and because we always have to have this arch enemy or nemesis, and we turn them into Darth Vader or whoever. There you go. The original one from the 70s. I think if we can see beyond that, we've got a part to play in everything that we're doing. That we can expect people not to like it. We can expect people to argue with us. We can expect all of these things. That's natural.
Yeah.
And what we've been accustomed to or used to is not natural. And I specifically use the word natural because normal is what you get used to, and you can get used to anything.
Yeah.
The new normal, there's that word again, right? So we got used to being locked up at home. Did we like it? Sometimes yes, sometimes no. If you're as antisocial as me, it was brilliant, right? But didn't need to go to weddings or anything else anymore. I just find those intensely emotionally draining sometimes. But I think what is natural has to be focused on now rather than what normal looks like, because we can create normal through that social contract and subculture.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah, that's interesting. My brain's going back to this kind of self-awareness element of trusting yourself, and what you were saying, Tasha, about putting a cloak on, and we see that in others, but it all boils down to how we're treating ourselves, how we're presenting ourselves, and just starting to see that, starting to acknowledge that will open stuff up. And it's that I have an issue with the word trust in not so much the word trust, but the way it's been taken over as particularly by organizations and industries and commercialized in terms of something that is logical. If you do this, if you do this, if you do this, people will trust you. And it's not logical. It's an emotional engagement. It's an emotional involvement in somebody. And there are things you can do that somebody will trust you as a result of those things, and other people will not because of their own perspective and usually the way they trust themselves. And it's that recognition of, so for example, trusting yourself. You talked there about the Fraser, feeling embarrassed about not asking for, how do you pronounce your name? That's a trust thing. There's something going on that I don't trust myself to handle that, to not laugh, to be confused. There's something going on there. And once you suddenly realize, I trust myself to just deal with whatever they say. They might say it again, and I go, no, didn't catch that. Or actually, you know what? I'm going to have to work at that. I'm struggling with that. I'm going to have to work at that. Leave it with me. I have this conversation with my dad. Some names are just hard. What's the name of that composer you like, Dad? Tchaikovsky. Look at that word. That's a really hard name for an English person to figure out. Yeah, you know it like that. Because you've taken the time to get to know it. It was important to you to get to know it.
Yep.
What method?
Use the example of in an airport, could you spot out of, hundreds of thousands of suitcases going through, you've got 10 minutes to find one suitcase. Here's a quick look, go find it. Well, I'll never find that out of my understand. Right, now I'm telling you there's $1 million in it. Okay, quick look, go find it. Well, yeah, okay, and off you go. That incentive, that just suddenly it's important to remember what it looks like. You will put everything into trying to remember what it looks like.
Yeah.
Purely because there's something in it.
Yeah.
And it's that when you can tap into that trust of yourself, I want to know this person's name. It's important to me to know this person's name, how they're really feeling, what they did at the weekend, what their aspirations are, why they took this job. One of the first questions I ask individuals in the team is, why are you doing this job? And they'll sit there going, because it fits my 5-year career plan, or I need the money. It's those kind of immediate responses. But underneath that, there's a reason you're doing it. And that reason will change.
Yeah. So in any kind of team setting, if you want to find a problem within a team, you will find it consciously and subconsciously. But, when we want to look for the good in the team, then it's there too. So it is that choice, isn't it? And I love the word mind growth rather than mindset, because, if the problems are there in the team, they'll always be there. But moving to a different company, the problems are still going to be there. Because you're looking for them and you're creating them and you're more aware of them and you're kind of ignoring, because that's how your brain's working at the moment, all the other good stuff that could be there. So,
I think maybe one of the things that the biggest realization was going through some psychometrics assessments and other interests around the psychology field was that I came to this realization that we're simply emotional based, and we do not react with logic or rational. We react with emotion, and then we justify it somewhere in between that emotional limbic response to the conscious mind, and we justify and rationalize why that's right or why that's wrong. And this reaction of being aware what it is that's actually happening there. I use the example of shoes. Talking to people, do you need those shoes? No, I just like them. So you got them because you needed shoes. Well, no, I got them because I like them. There you go, right? So that's an emotional response other than a rational one, because you could have had any other pair of shoes because your need was shoes, right? So if we think and we break down how we approach things and understand that everything we're doing is emotional based around feelings, why don't we just simply acknowledge that feels kind of right? Let's pursue that with transparency on, I have a feeling that we should probably do it this way. I can't really rationalize why. It's just a feeling. So let's pursue it. And if it turns out to be that's not right, then we'll walk away from it. Rather than, I believe we should follow this 15-stage plan that we can measure on a KPI, and it's so unnatural. But we want to do it agile, quickly. So, there's this kind of contradiction in how we're approaching things, and we expect people to be logic and rational when they're not at all. We're emotional, and we'll logically and rationalize that emotion.
Yeah,
but that's where Captain Kirk gets it right.
Yeah, but there are some people out there who are more logical than others.
They are.
Okay, well, I understand that you're in that process because that's how your brain works, and you were looking at this from that perspective. That's cool. I'm thinking differently, and I'm feeling that I need to go with my gut. So how do we work around that? And that's where collaboration comes on board. Exactly,
right. And there's the benefits of both have to be realized, that one's not better than the other. It's just different.
One's not always right. No one's always right.
And what we're pursuing as a logical thought is a learned behavior. And my experience is this, and I'm all for experience, don't get me wrong, but when people say, well, I've got 25 years experience in this, and I wonder, right, is that 25 years of growth, or is that I learned something the first year and for 24 years I've been doing the same thing? Or is it I'm doing something wrong and I'm repeating that process, and also other people are copying me because they think that's right? And that, people look at that as a skeptical approach, and I'm just looking at it to try and understand it. And I think the most honest thing that a team can do with you is challenge a decision by asking, why?
Explore it.
And when somebody asks why you're doing that, it's one of those emotional triggers. What do you mean? Why am I doing that? It justifies that defensive mechanism in us, where again, that's the trust towards ourselves and the confidence in ourselves, where you could just simply turn around and be transparent and saying, well, I made that decision because of this, this, and this.
Yeah.
It's a really interesting point, that kind of respect of experience, not time, but experience. Yes. I was chatting with a friend yesterday who runs an IT company, and he was, we were talking about members of his team, and he's kind of got, not an apprentice anymore, but essentially 4 years from school, essentially. And the things he's gone through in those 4 years in terms of company buyouts, transformations, huge, priority system failures, huge sorts of IT stuff, as well as the programming and stuff. And then they've got another guy, older, still young, my age, but has been, is 6 months into an IT career, but has been a chartered surveyor, has worked in as a paramedic, has got actually different experiences with people and different types of non-IT types of situations. But one's got 4 years of IT experience and one's got 6 months. But actually their experiences together that they can bring to that team are just so valuable, no matter what, no matter whether they've got a 17-year-old social media who's doing all their social media as an apprentice, and she's got different experiences. It's just, she raises stuff that we're all like, wow, not even thought about it from that perspective. Don't always go with it, but actually it just challenges that thinking. Her experiences as a 17-year-old in today's world are radically different from all the others. So respecting that is so important.
I'm not sure I'd want to be a 17-year-old in today's world with all the expectations and the pressures that are faced there.
But they don't know any different. That's the thing, isn't it?
Exactly.
It's their reality.
Yeah. And so I think if we can bring together all of those different realities, that's inclusion, isn't it?
Yeah.
Rather than the standard approach to diversity and inclusion that we see, the kind of need X amount of this and X amount of Y, that's not inclusion. And I'm probably going to upset including people online about that, but that's just about, what we're looking for here are multiple perspectives to bring the right solution.
Yeah, absolutely. You don't want people.
Does it matter who's right? Because if you're in the team is right, you're automatically right.
Yeah. But that's it, I love it when I've got people surrounding me who have different thoughts, and I encourage that, because I don't, I don't know everything, and I don't want all my friends to know everything and my colleagues to know everything, because it's great to be with like-minded people, but equally helpful to be with people who have a different outlook on stuff and work and life, so that I get to understand from their perspective. Yes, like you said, you'll go down the right avenue. Well, there's just one road, isn't it? But there's lots of other branches that could take you to different destinations.
And we get that in career planning. I've got this that 5-year career plan. What do you want to be in 5 years? Nothing, because I want to be retired, or whatever that vision is.
Yeah. Get what you're focusing.
Go for it, right? And if it takes you another 10 years, another 15 years, as long as that's your vision and that's what you want to do, then you'll find a way, because you want to. That's motivation. I want. And I think we spend so much time trying to motivate people in relationships, and coming back to this, incentivizing and really pushing people. And I just feel like, well, if you can't decide in 24 hours if you want to do something, then it's not important enough for you. So the chances are that it's no.
Yeah.
For now.
That decision making, yeah.
And that's fine. And saying no to promotions is not the end of your career. It might be redirecting you
the start of something
different
thing.
That you didn't consider before. And that's okay too. And does it feel good? It feels uncomfortable. Does it feel confident? I'm not sure, but I know that I don't really want to do that. So if you don't really want to do it, then the chances are you're not going to be brilliant at it.
I think there's an interesting, I might as well join the SEO flavor we've done today, but there's an interesting reframing of, there's a lot of focus about saying no, and it's important, and it is. But what I've seen is this kind of resistance to leaning into what we've said yes to.
Yeah.
It's that kind of, and we don't share that. You've turned that promotion down. What's going on there? So it just wasn't right. As opposed to right here and right now, what's important to me is having time with my family, because the kids are young and I want to be there for them. And I saw that if I took the promotion, it would take me away from that. So what I've said yes to is more presence with my family, and lean into that, not the negative of, I didn't take that promotion. Okay. We don't share that. Yes, we don't. And I think, again, that comes back to that self-awareness of, am I really bought into that? Yes. Oh, I'd love to be with my family, but the money would be nice. Because then you still not quite come to peace with it, I suppose. So
I think if a company sees you're good enough, they'll wait.
Yeah, absolutely.
And if that company doesn't wait, it doesn't mean they don't see you as good enough. They just found somebody else with more relevant experience and the timing. And that's the timing element, that we're also in a rush for something. And I'm not sure what that rush is for. And I find myself, like, I've got to deliver this. And well, actually, I don't. I don't have to. I want to. And if I deliver it early, then good. If I deliver it on time, then good. Just don't be late. So we put this extraordinary pressure on ourselves to perform. But who are we performing? For whom?
Yeah, I was listening to a podcast actually yesterday on Dr. Rangan Chatterjee's ones, and it was all about productivity. And I can't remember what the guy's name was. And he's, read all the books, and he's written a couple of books himself. And he was saying, when he became really productive and aimed towards the zero email system, he was like, actually, I got more in my inbox because I was responding to things really quickly, and I got a reputation to responding to things really quickly. So therefore, lots of other people wanted to email me. So it had exactly that, a negative effect from being productive. And he, the kind of the main message that I got from that podcast was really, yes, about saying no to things that we don't want to do, but also saying no to the things that we also want to do, to create that space, to give us what we need in that time and space. And I think that was a real, I've never heard that before in those words, but I think in a team context. And he was talking about in Scandinavia, they have fika, and every day at a certain time, 3 or 4 o'clock, they meet for coffee. And it's not something that everybody has to do, but people love coffee and they love cake, and they know that they're not talking about work and they're just talking about stuff. And I really like that. I work for a Stockholm-based company, and I love that.
But that's the social element, right? Because we are social.
Yeah.
Social and emotional. The most illogical, unperfect things in the world, as people would see it, are actually some of the most amazing things that, if we tap into it in ourselves, we're expressive about it with this confidence in ourselves, as we've talked about, and understanding that, again, as I mentioned, not everybody's going to like it. And what? That's okay. I don't mind. And I think that's a key phrase. I don't mind, rather than I don't care.
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, but it does. It if you mind about something, it means you care about it. I don't care is so dismissive and ignorant.
Yeah,
and
that word anyway.
People disagree with me. That's a sign of confidence in myself to say, I don't mind that. That's okay. I might learn something. I don't know if I'm right. Yeah. I don't know what's right till we do and try. So it's all very kind of situational. And I think in today's world, the people I'm dealing with, they've got this terminology, the C-suite executive. And, when somebody says to me, C-suite, I think cheesecake, or I think sofa. And I just think, you're really running your career by job title here, aren't you? As opposed to, and the one thing that people don't like me pointing out is that you're always a first line supervisor to someone. I'm a fourth line manager, and well, you're actually not really. You're just a first liner, just a first liner. And it's kind of like, well, it's the same mindset all the way. The stuff you deal with is different, but the same mindset should be there. The care, genuine care, compassion and empathy, not too much, but empathy towards the people that I'm working with, because they're the ones that are bringing success with you, not for you.
Yeah, it's interesting that element of job titles and how that impacts those relationships, because some people say it doesn't matter. It doesn't, they don't mind what they are, but as soon as their job titles are maybe taken away from them, they're like, oh, actually, it's a big part of my identity. So what is it? Is it the job title, or is it what it means to them and how they're respected and viewed in the company?
Yeah, there's a question I really love. I don't know where I got it from. I picked it up from somebody else and started applying it. And instead of asking, what do you do? I ask, who are you?
Yeah.
And people go, what do you mean? Who am I?
Yeah.
I'm well, no, who are you? Where are you from? What do you, who are you?
Yeah.
And what, am I not supposed to be here? Well, I guess so, but who are you?
Yeah.
I had a real realization a few weeks after I'd left my 20 years of corporate life, and I kind of handed back the keys to my company car. And I'd had company cars for the last 12, 13 years. And then all of a sudden I was driving Kia Picanto, this kind of go-kart, we call it. Still got it because daughter's nearly 17, so it'll be her car. But I was driving this car, and I was driving down the road, and I was spotting BMWs and Audis, looking at them and going, I bet they're looking at me, thinking, this is middle-aged guy driving a Picanto. What's going on there? Before it took me ages to realise I'm driving my kids to school every day and picking them up from school. I haven't done that. I've done it occasionally, but I haven't done that consistently. I was doing hundreds of miles on the road. I'm doing 7 miles a day in this car and loving every minute of the time. Yeah, all right, the kids are teenagers. They're not necessarily the most conversant, but I'm in the same physical space. I'm with my family. Why am I looking at these people going back to this time and thinking, oh, they're judging me because I'm not driving a BMW? This car is giving me the ability to do something I want to do.
And the reality is,
it's obvious.
The reality is they probably don't care. Yeah.
No, absolutely. I'm not that. I've never been that bothered by cars, so it was like a surprise. How's that? How have I got attached to that status symbol, of job title, or car, or whatever? How have I got attached to that when it really doesn't mean anything? But I'm still. I'm saying that out loud, but there's clearly something going on. So we do put stock in these things, and it's not to say that's bad. It's noticing that and then going, okay, is that what I want? There's nothing wrong with wanting a Tesla or a BMW, whatever, or whatever car or big house or whatever. There's nothing wrong with that. It's the reasons you want it. Right? I said before, but I'll speak to clients and say, what? Going back to your why. Well, that will come up at some point. Well, I'm doing this for my kids. Okay, why? And there'll be a moment of silence with, well, because that's the right thing to do, isn't it? To do it for my kids. But why? What is it about doing it for your kids? Do you want to leave a legacy? Do you want more time with them? Do you want to be the role model? Did you have a bad? Was your parents' absence? Were your parents too present? What is it about your kids that is inspiring you to do this? And just dig into that a bit to figure out what's unique, what's contextual, what's nuanced for you. And exposing that as a team is really, really powerful.
And then this last thing, where people are saying, "Oh, we live in a performance environment in business." Actually, we're in a performance environment because we place ourselves there. We're not just in business. We're constantly comparing ourselves to others because we've been subjected to that since day one. With behaviors, with you should behave differently at school and in university and all these other things, and so we're naturally programmed to compare. And it's that saying, we always want the bigger car, the bigger house, and I just I remember thinking to myself, the car I drive is 10 years old. It's the color. The reason I want that car is because it's the brand, the color, and the inside's a leather wood material that my grandfather used to drive. My grandfather and I were extremely close, and I have memories going to school in that car, not what we talked about, but the smell. And so I have that car because of it. And I know that at some point I'm going to have to let that car go, and that's going to be traumatic, because it's not about the car, right? So as long as we understand what it is that we're connected to behind it, I think that matters. And people look at me, why are you driving a 10-year-old car? Why don't you get a new one? Well, first of all, there's nothing wrong with that one. Secondly, I really like it. And thirdly, I feel like part of my grandfather's with me every time I drive it. That's why. And people look at me like, but you could have this and it doesn't have that and doesn't. Yeah, but it drives and it stops and it's comfy and it smells good. So, whatever it is good for you, that's fine. And I still sometimes feel like myself saying, well, maybe I should buy that instead because, that's that says more about me as a consultant in a company and everything else, and all that's is it aligned with the brand. And I stopped myself thinking, no, I just stop.
Yeah,
that works.
That's what's aligned with your brand. You recognizing what's important.
Yes, exactly. Right. So, we're so busy being visible. Right? That was more term of visibility in our business. What is that? Visibility. Hi, look at me. I'm on camera. That's visibility.
It's the perception of success.
Yeah. What is it? What is it you're portraying? What are you actually portraying that, or are you really like that?
Yeah.
Because one of the biggest challenges I always said to my new managers is, I'm really sorry you've got me to manage because I'm really complex and I'm really difficult. Sometimes I really can't stand myself because we fall into habits and routines that are not good, but we're so good at it. We just, and if you can be so critical towards yourself, not overly dangerously critical, but it keeps you kind of aligned, and that you realize that you're moving that relationship with you forward one little bit at a time, expanding that comfort zone, also as the confidence zone, then people will notice that. But if you're faking it to make it because you want to get noticed and by being visible, then that's going to be very short-lived. And, you end up being the Eurovision Song Contest winner of the corporation that nobody remembered last year, right?
Brilliant. What an awesome thing to end on in terms of your granddad and stuff. And I've ticked off visibility, so I think we've hit every single buzzword that's out there, which is good. That's good. I'll get the SEO up.
Hang on a minute. I'm just going to check the list to make sure I worked them all in there.
That was your intent. Let's get these 10 words in there.
Yeah.
To get these words in there.
I used to do that actually in a meeting, right? Did you do that as well? Where you sit in a corporate meeting, you try and get the word for the day?
People, certain people, right? If I can get this word in there.
I used to use the word meerkat. We decide on that. I'm going to get meerkat into today's conversation. Because that's all the meeting was worth,
I would try and get geeky words in there, but meerkats are cool too. I just want to quickly shout out Salman Atif, who's been commenting brilliantly, but my comments are going to YouTube, so sorry, Salman. I have been trying to reply, but I can't figure out how to get my comments to go to LinkedIn, so I'll sort it out for next time. But thank you for sticking with us. And the little emoji car, that's cool. Good to have you here. So, is there anything we've not covered? I think we have to do this again. We could just talk about this for ages. So that was cool. I enjoyed that.
Me too.
Yep. Tea and medals, everyone, I think.
Yes. Go and get that cup of tea. Yep. Good to see you both.
Good to see you.
Look after yourselves.
Take care. Have a good one.
Have a nice day, everyone.
Yeah. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.